I don't know that there's a. Was there any other interpretation to that press conference than?
And he's gone.
Kevin Stefanski's gone. I mean, because here's the first thing that crossed my the Jeff's question, hilarious. It wasn't even a question, I guess. Like iconic moment for Jeff Shudell. He you know the hold my beer meme?
Yeah.
That Jeff does that to himself. He's like, oh, you think that's a good question? Wait till I ask this one. Hold my beer. But that was one thing. But we both kind of looked at each other. He was asked about David Njoku and like the relationship he had with him early on. And Kevin, he's like cracking jokes at his press conference all of a sudden. He was like, yeah, David didn't like me early on because he thought I didn't like him, but really I just told him the truth and he didn't like it. And I was like, where did that come from?
He never says stuff like that.
He never says anything like that.
Well, I mean, remember his first year here, David Njoku asked for a trade.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we know. David has been more candid about their relationship than Kevin has. David has been very much like, yeah, we didn't get along early on. Then we kind of had this, we had this meeting where we got together and like talk through things and like work through our differences and had couples counseling or whatever you want to call it. And now we're all good. But like, Kevin just gives you the straightforward answer of like, yeah, David and I, we early on, we worked through some things and it's good. Like he was cracking jokes about their relationship being on the rocks early on because he didn't like what he said. He didn't like they told him the truth. Like this was the most like open book Kevin Stefanski we've ever gotten. And then like I get that he was asking me based off the line or answering based off the line of questioning. It was a lot of questions about this player and that player and what's it been like to coach this guy and what's it been like to coach that group and he was giving these answers of how much they've meant in terms of like the hard work they've put in this year, and it was a lot of the rookie guys and whatever. And he even joked, like I think it was Ashley Bastock, like, yeah, just keep going. Like we'll just he's out here cracking jokes. All of a sudden he's gonna do stand up at Hilarities over the week when he gets back next weekend. Like maybe that's his swan song. Is like he gets fired on Monday. He stays through town. He does Joe Flacco did a jersey signing down in Hartville or whatever. Maybe Kevin Stefanski is going to do a stand up routine of Hilarities as his sign off before he leaves Cleveland next Saturday. So see you there, Kevin.
If he does, let me know because I did get a gift card for Christmas to Hilarities.
There you go. That'd be the show to go to. What jokes does Kevin Stefanski have at Andrew Berry's expense on the way out the door?
I guess that felt like Kevin. I know Kevin has like younger kids, so maybe he did make it to midnight this year. But that felt like he was sitting there on New Year's Eve with his family, and he's like, "Man, you know what? I got the opportunity to be an NFL coach, and I'm probably going to land on my feet pretty soon here. And it's going to be bummed to get fired by the Cleveland Browns after all this didn't work out. But you know what? Darn it, did we not have a good run?" Which I think people would argue, no, you didn't. But then he just rolled in today and was like, "Man, I appreciate you guys."
Respectfully, though, like it has been a pretty good run for Kevin in terms of like the success that he had here. I mean, he gave the franchise its first taste of success, which is part of the reason why he's even in the conversation for being fired now, because it's ever since those moments it's gotten worse.
He's kind of like a girlfriend, like after your crazy girlfriend that stabilizes you, gets you back on track a little bit, but really isn't the long-term answer for you, and you just hang on a little bit too long to where you start to really, really see the warts pop up on her. And so that's sort of what I'm looking at here right now, because I get like you can't. If he does get fired on Monday, I think a lot of it's going to be what his record was, the quarterbacks that he dealt with, all of the issues around the team.
You're saying that Kevin Stefanski's a rebound? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but because
a rebound from Hugh Jackson?
Rebound from Freddie Kitchens. Like, Freddie Kitchens was such an unmitigated, immature disaster that they needed an adult in the room.
Isn't a rebound usually come after, like, the good person? Like, isn't a rebound usually
50-50? So my experience, it never is after a good person. You have a lot of experience.
Yeah. So
okay. My grandma's listening. Come on now. For at least personally, but I do see the rebound thing. But it's like the rebound that you stick around with for a long time, and then maybe you two get a little too comfortable, and then both of you get a little, out of shape and stop, dressing up a little bit because, you're just kind of comfortable with it. That's sort of what I'm seeing with it.
Interesting.
So, when you contextualize Kevin Stefanski's tenure here, part of it needs to be that he was the adult in the room that righted the ship after Hugh Jackson into Freddie Kitchens.
It's funny that he was the adult in the room and then they wanted to get an adult in the room at quarterback, and that's probably what's going to do him in.
Yeah, well, no, fair counterpoint, but they didn't exactly vet how that was going to end up. So that's the positive that I will give to Kevin Stefanski. But
listen,
to say that this last 6 years,
the positive is simple. The positive is, yes, the people who are out here and like, why would we move on from Kevin Stefanski? He's given us the most success we've had in since the team returned. That is factually true. They have had the most success under Kevin Stefanski that they've had since the team returned. They made 2 playoff appearances. They won a playoff game. All that is accurate. It doesn't mean you shouldn't move on from him if it's time to move on from him. I'm just saying that is very fair. That's the successes. But I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here and like how we're contextualizing or how we're memorializing Kevin Stefanski's tenure here. But did you take away anything else other than from that press conference that he probably knows he's not going to be here?
No, I mean the David Njoku stuff was like wild. There have been very few moments in a Kevin Stefanski press conference where both of us look at each other and are like, "Wow, he just said that." Like that's crazy. Usually, that'll come from like a Miles press conference, maybe Jim Schwartz or I guess Bubba earlier this year when he was like, "Yeah, I just don't have the guys." It's not that I'm a bad coach; it's that I don't have the guys for me. The counterpoint, devil's advocate thing would be they probably are going to move on from David Njoku, but I think we're all kind of comfortable with that to begin with.
Maybe he'll join Kevin Stefanski in New York. Where you think he's going to go?
I mean, I don't think that...
It'll be Kevin Stefanski, David Njoku, and Jackson Dart.
Wow. And Cam Scatabo. And Malik Neighbors. Damn, that's kind of a good offense.
All of a sudden, he's like, I'm going to go play Madden later and see how this all works out.
I think I might go watch some Giants
Can I trade for Kevin Stefanski? Are coach trades a thing in Madden yet? I don't think you could do that.
I don't know. But I mean, I don't think David Njoku's coming back, right?
So you think there's still a world that this thing isn't signed to deliver? I
think if you, like the obvious... I think
it seems pretty obvious that it's happening.
The obvious takeaway from that...
Especially because we now know Taylor Fenton Jr. is not playing on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Carson Spencer's not playing on Sunday. Like, this is the classic... Yeah, they're going to probably get rolled on Sunday, and they're going to have just 4 wins. Like, this is setting up for them to lose this game.
I would expect that there's going to be more inactives. Like, anybody that has an absolute boo-boo. Like,
also, it's bad news, too, for Shedeur Sanders and people who want Shedeur Sanders to be the guy next year, because without Harold Fenton Jr., it's another weapon missing, and you want him to go out on a high. You don't want him to go out on, like, some dreadful performance. And like you want him to go out in like a blaze of glory this year and end his season with such a great performance that everybody can spend the offseason saying, yeah, this guy showed us enough. Not like, this was a bad day for him. So this is all just bad. And as far as Sunday's concerned, as far as Kevin Stefanski's job, if he is going to get fired, if he isn't going to get fired, I think this is all just bad for him.
It's going to be another game where you can't really, you're going to, at 5 o'clock on Sunday, you're going to be like, well, I don't know how Shedeur played. Like, I don't know how to technically take away from it, which is like, disaster level for this season. He already has, 7 starts on the year because you had to go with Joe Flacco and then Dylan Gabriel before you got to him. And so if another one of those games against the Bengals is going to be, well, he didn't have anybody on the offensive line. He didn't have Harold Fannin. Quinshon's out. How do you even properly evaluate this guy? I mean, that's going to be an absolute failure of a Sunday, whether they win or lose.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main thing where I'm taking away from it.
The only thing that won't be a failure is if Myles Garrett gets the sack record. That's like the only thing that's left.
So do you want him to...
Well, I don't
You want him to get the sack record, right?
We'll talk about the sack record a little bit later because I want to stick with sort of the coaching part of this conversation for now. First and foremost, I think that press conference felt very much like Kevin knows what's coming on Monday. Mm-hmm. That's just me. Again, the way he was kind of... what he was saying... Totally different demeanor than we've ever heard from him. He's cracking jokes. He's nodding along as Jeff Shadell tells him how much he loves him. I just thought like that felt like a very different Kevin Stefanski press conference, and I think he's kind of accepted that reality. I think there have been tea leaves this year that a rift has sort of formed between him and Andrew Berry, and I can't help but wonder like. If this is all that just kind of busting at the seams at this point. I think it has to be, right? That's my interpretation of it all. And so to me, this all feels like it's Kevin Stefanski's probably done on Monday. And the question is Andrew Berry going to outlast him? And because it just feels like small little comments here or there, the Bubba Ventrone comments you brought up, it feels like it's just an untenable situation between those two. And you wonder where this all sort of started, right? Because all we ever heard every step of the way for 6 years was, we're all on the same page. We make these decisions together. We're all thought partners. Somewhere along the way, it feels like there like a split or a fracture happened, and it's now perpetuated itself this season, I think, even further, to the point where this thing probably ends with at least one of them getting fired, even though I think it should probably be both. If you're going to fire one, you got to fire the other.
Where do you think the nexus point was? Because I have an idea.
I think I'm going to point to the obvious thing, which is the thing that happened several years ago. But but you might if you have a different idea, I think we should explore that. Anthony maybe doesn't agree 100% that it for sure means he's gone, but I don't know. The way he was talking, the jokes he was cracking, as candid as he was, sure seems that way.
There was a big we had a good run here.
Yeah, he was, like I said, he was talking about how great certain guys were, and I don't know. It certainly felt that way to me. And we asked the question before the break because one of the ways that this whole saga has been phrased is that it could Monday could come around, and this could end up being one of these situations where it's a quote unquote mute. I'm using air quotes for those who can't or not stream. So, mutual parting of ways rather than it just being like a straight up you're fired, like Donald Trump on The Apprentice or whatever. Like it feels like it's kind of trending in the direction where they both kind of just say, we think maybe we need a new coach. You feel like you've done your best here and things have kind of gotten untenable. Maybe it's just we go in our separate directions. There's been some tea leaves on that. I know Albert Breer is one of the first people to bring up here on the station with Nick and JP that, maybe it's just time and that maybe he's kind of looking and surveying things and feels like there's places he can go and that it might just be time to move on. So listen, I think that feels like it's kind of where this is headed. But because of that, I think it's left of this a lot of gray area for why now? Like, why does he want out if it's a mutual thing? If it's not just the Browns saying, we're done with you, why would he maybe force the issue and say, it's time for me to move on? And what I think is interesting about this is, it does feel like, especially this year in particular, that there has been sort of this breaking point between him and Andrew Berry. And the kumbaya of, hey, we're on the same page and we make all these decisions together, that's kind of gone away this year. And so you said you thought you had a moment sort of pointed out as to when that maybe happened, when this fracture between the two happened. I think I know bigger picture. I feel like I have a sense of where it maybe started, but I'm curious your thoughts on where you think this maybe rift between the two sides that could lead to Kevin deciding he does went out on his own accord on Monday maybe started.
Yeah, there's been 4 different things that have happened this year alone since March that you could technically point to. I think a lot of people look at the Joe Flacco trade and then the subsequent Kevin Stefanski press conference of that was a surprise to me as the beginning of the end for it. I honestly think it was when they traded Kenny Pickett, because it seemed like Kenny Pickett was such a big Kevin Stefanski guy that Kevin Stefanski wanted in the building. Remember, he was the first guy, the first move when free agency opened. Instead of signing anybody, they traded for Kenny Pickett and got Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of here. I think he was the guy that Kevin Stefanski wanted to nurture into being the bridge quarterback. He was young enough so that you could still feel like there was enough juice in those legs that you could get a couple of wins out of him. And then all of a sudden he's got this somewhat minor hamstring injury that prevented him from playing. But if you're Kevin Stefanski, you're like, dude, this is probably my best option to win games early on. And a couple of these veterans can rally around Kenny Pickett, who was a former first-round pick and, started games as early as 2025 or 2024. And then, I think he liked having Joe Flacco back in the building. I think that was definitely plan B for him. But he also probably just wanted him as the backup older voice in the room to help out Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, and he wanted to actually play with Kenny Pickett. So I think that was the beginning of is this really how this season's going to go? All of the guys that I want to play are going to get traded away for a bag of balls?
Yeah. I think that's a fair place to sort of point to, for sure. I I don't know. The Kenny one felt less egregious. It's funny because like I did my mock 53-man roster, and I had them keep it all 4 quarterbacks, and that was partially because Andrew Berry on the final preseason game broadcast had mentioned that keeping 4 was a possibility. Like I forget the exact wording of what he said, but he said it in a way where it felt like they really could just keep 4 and explore it that way, and they were fine with that. And so. Maybe, I don't know if something changed. Like, it felt like they were sort of on the same page with that. But maybe you're right. Like, maybe Andrew Berry felt we got to recoup something because, this didn't go as planned. He was injured, whatever. So let's get our 5th-round pick back. And Kevin wasn't on board with that. I think the Flacco one you bring up is certainly a place where it felt that way. And I said that at the time. The day he sat there and the first thing out of his mouth, the Flacco thing was, this was a surprise to us, was... That's a different answer.
Yeah.
Normally he just comes to the podium and says, we had an opportunity here and we talked through it and we felt like this was the best thing for the team and we trust Andrew and whatever. There was none of that. He did not come to Andrew Berry's defense after that one at all. It was just, that was a surprise to us. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So I think there's something there, but I'm going to be honest, man. Like, if we want to really find the origins of this, I still believe in my heart of hearts that it all started with the Deshaun thing. Like, okay. And the reason I feel this way, and this is just, nobody I think has a clear picture at this stage of who ordered the code red when it came to trying to pursue Deshaun Watson. It's from what I know or what I've heard, I think Andrew Berry liked the idea of Deshaun Watson. He liked him in his previous stops. And that he was intrigued by that and wanted to try to do this thing. But I don't know if it was like, Paulie Podesta helping drive that ship. I don't know if it was Jimmy Haslam being like, let's go get the guy. Ken and Lima talk all the time about how they've heard that Jimmy Haslam had to be talked into it because they love Baker so much.
Yeah.
So, but the one thing that does feel like this is just me sort of speculating a little bit here. The one thing that I've never heard is like Kevin Stefanski was the one who really wanted Deshaun Watson. I've never heard anybody say that. And so that makes me believe that maybe the seeds of dissension were planted back then. Because I have to think, man, like, look at how the last several years have gone since that trade. Look what he's had to do since that trade. Fire his offensive coordinator who... We've heard since he left, Alex Van Pelt was like kind of a glue guy in the locker room, and now we went to New England, and he was kind of having a similar impact. Now, obviously, he's not there anymore because that staff got fired as well. But like there was that conversation. He was forced to fire his OC. Brings in a new OC who's supposed to be ready-made for Deshaun Watson. That doesn't go well. Kevin has to give it the play calling because he's like, maybe we'll give it to the guy who's supposed to be here to help this quarterback. Well, unfortunately, he gave it up after that quarterback got hurt for the season anyway, and so then it was all downhill. Then he hires a new OC. Then he has to give up the play calling again, and I don't know if there was like a forced you got to do it thing there, but it just feels like ever since then, I have to think at that time when they were going through the Deshaun Watson decision, Kevin, at least on some level, I'm not saying he wasn't at least excited about the possibilities of working with a quarterback of that magnitude, but I have to believe he knew it might not be a flawless fit for what his offense called for.
Yeah, so my theory on that is that Andrew Berry was the beginnings of getting Deshaun Watson. He was the guy that really liked him when he was in Philadelphia, really loved the idea of getting him in that draft, and then when he wasn't able to, when he came to Cleveland, he had this idea of, I can get this guy that I really wanted and loved a couple of years ago, and then he went to Kevin Stefanski and said, you have this opportunity to work with a quarterback that is, a top 5 quarterback at the time in the league. You can take this to all heights. And yeah, I know he doesn't necessarily fit into your scheme and your program that you have built over the last 15 years in Minnesota, but we can make this work because of how talented he was. And then they both went to Jimmy and was like, we need to move on from Baker for that. And I think at the time, either Kevin didn't feel like he had enough prowess or cachet to tell Andrew Berry, listen, this guy's not going to fit with me. This is a programmatic non-fit from the beginning. And he's kicking himself for that because, as you mentioned, all of those things.
Or he was just drowned out because it was like, 3/4 of the power structure here. If it was like D. Podesta and Haslam and Berry were all on board with it. And so he was like, I guess I can't really push back much, so I'll try to make it work.
And I could see that. I'm just thinking, like, with the Kenny Pickett thing, I was thinking, like, this year. Because it seemed before this year that it was, we are all on board with whatever we're doing together. We're thought partners, right? That was the big, when they finally write the book about this regime.
They have all these phrases on their building, like toughness, accountability, like the smart, tough, like tough.
Smart, tough accountability.
Yeah, all that stuff. They should have one that just says like thought partners. Just painted on the wall.
That'll be the name of the book when we do the
or the 30 for 30 documentary they do.
Right. So that's why I think it started. But then, the
Deshaun trade honestly could be worth a 30-30 one day.
It should be. It's going down as the worst trade in NFL history that set a franchise back damn near 10 years. So it should. But I think this is going to sound like a defense of Kevin Stefanski. I don't want it to be because you still have to be a good coach and coach up players.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, here we go. Starting in March, you traded down from number 2, and you still got a fantastic player, but you got a defensive player in a unit that Kevin Stefanski has basically just handed over to the other guy in Jim Schwartz. And then you drafted 2 quarterbacks, and then you find that you're like, all right, well, that's neat, but I kind of really like Kenny Pickett. And then you trade Kenny Pickett, and you're like, okay, well, I won 11 games at the end of the year with Joe Flacco, and we were able to get to a playoff game, so maybe I can work out with him. And then Andrew Bader said, nope, because he's so hell-bent on getting quote-unquote value out of these guys that he would rather, collect picks like a hoarder instead of actually playing on a football field. And eventually Kevin Stefanski just had to throw his hands up, and I think that's what happened this year, was this cavalcade of, you are hamstringing me so badly after you already hamstrung me with the Deshaun Watson thing. I'm just... I'm going to wash my hands of this thing and move on.
Well, it's an interesting thought because I think there are multiple points along the way where the split may be continued, and all these things you allude to, I think, are part of that. It wasn't just like one incident. It was probably an initial incident and then multiple things that sort of transpired, and that's where we're at, where there's this mutual parting of ways that's being reported as going down potentially on Monday. And it certainly felt that way at the press conference we just heard Kevin Stefanski talking at. So, I don't know, man. And you bring up the quarterback thing, by the way. I think there's another part of this that is going to be very telling if Kevin is on the outs about the current state of the quarterback situation as well.